Have you ever wondered why children resemble their parents but are not exactly identical to them? Why do we inherit characteristics like eye color, hair type, or certain biological traits from our parents? The answer lies in genetics and heredity. And one of the most important scientists in the history of genetics was Gregor Mendel, known as the father of genetics. In this video, we will understand Mendel's law of inheritance in a simple way, including the law of dominance, law of segregation, and law of independent assortment. Gregor Mendel was an Austrian monk and scientist who performed famous experiments on garden pea plants Pisum sativum. He selected pea plants because they had several easily distinguishable characteristics such as tall or dwarf stem, round or wrinkled seeds, yellow or green seed color, purple or white flowers. Mendel carefully crossed different pea plants and studied the characteristics of their offspring. From these experiments, he developed the basic principles of heredity that we now call Mendel's law of inheritance. Before understanding the laws, let's learn a few basic terms. A gene is a unit of heredity that influences a particular characteristic. Different forms of a gene are called alleles. For example, for plant height, we can use capital T for the dominant allele producing tall plants and small t for the recessive allele producing dwarf plants. An organism with two identical alleles such as capital T or a small t is called homozygous. An organism with two different alleles such as capital T and a small t is called heterozygous. The visible characteristics is called the phenotype while the genetic makeup is called the genotype. The first law is the law of dominance. Mendel crossed a pure tall pea plant capital T with a pure dwarf pea plant small t. Let's see what happens. The tall parent produces T gametes while the dwarf parent produces small t gametes. When they combine, all offspring receive capital T small t. So the genotype of the first generation offspring called the F1 generation is capital T small t. But all these plants appear tall. Why? Because the capital T allele is dominant over the small t allele. Therefore, Mendel stated that when two contrasting alleles are present together in a heterozygote, one may express itself while the other is masked. This is known as the law of dominance. The second law is the law of segregation, also called the law of purity of gametes. Let's continue our example. The F1 plant has the genotype capital T small t. When this plant produces gametes, the two alleles capital T and small t separate from each other. So, some gametes receive capital T while others receive small t. Now, if two F1 plants are crossed, the possible offspring are capital T, capital T small t, capital T small t and small t. So, the genotype ratio is 1:2:1 and the phenotypic ratio is 3:1. This demonstrates the law of segregation. The important idea is that the two alleles of a gene pair separate during gamete formation, so each gamete receives only one allele. Now let's move to the third law, the law of independent assortment. This law explains what happens when we study two different characteristics at the same time. For example, Mendel studied seed shape, round or wrinkled, seed color, yellow or green. Let's represent them as capital R as round, small r as wrinkled, and capital Y as a yellow and small y as a green. Dihybrid plant may have the genotype. According to the Mendel's principle, the alleles of different gene pairs can be distributed into gametes independently of one another, producing combinations such as capital R, capital Y, capital R, small r, capital Y, and small r, small y. In a typical Mendelian dihybrid cross, the F2 generation produces the famous phenotypic ratio 9:3:3:1. That means 9 round yellow, 3 round green, 3 wrinkled yellow, and 1 wrinkled green. This is called the law of independent assortment. However, this principle applies most clearly to genes that assort independently, such as genes located on different chromosomes or sufficiently far apart on the same chromosome. Let's quickly revise the three laws. First, law of dominance. In a heterozygote, the dominant allele can mask the expression of the recessive allele. Second, law of segregation. The two alleles of a gene separate during gamete formation. Third, law of independent assortment. Alleles of different gene pairs can assort independently during gamete formation when the genes are independently assorting. Remember these 3 points and you have the foundation of Mendelian genetics. So, Gregor Mendel's experiment with pea plants laid the foundation for modern genetics. His work helped us understand how characteristics are inherited from one generation to the next. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more easy biological explanations. And don't forget to comment below which topic should we cover next. Thanks for watching and I will see you in the next video.